morning and welcome back to World Talks here on TVP World, coming to you live from Warsaw. And of course, we continue the topic of Ukraine. Over the past 3 years, Ukrainians and their allies at times used to voice discontent about the way that President Joe Biden occasionally delayed or restricted weapons deliveries. However, even then they knew whose side he was on. Now, with a stark departure from Biden's policies, Trump's continues to be an enigma. Ukrainians more and more often voice their confusion and disappointment with the current US administration. What shall we expect moving forward? How best to prepare for it? To discuss, I have Ryhor Nizhnikau, a senior researcher from the Finnish Institute of International Affairs, joining me here this morning. Good morning, sir. Thank you for being with us.
Good morning.
So let's start with essentially what has been going on, sort of broadly speaking. We have this major shift, major departure by the Trump administration from what was agreed upon and promised by Joe Biden. So what can we expect moving forward? I mean, is there anything that we can take for certain because the situation is so very dynamic?
Yes, there is one thing we can take for certain, which is that Donald Trump's plan, if we can call it a plan, will not work out. So there will be no peace, no ceasefire with Russia. So his current rapprochement will fail. And the big question is what he will do next. Will he return to Biden's policies, or he will continue to be a disruptor and try to withdraw even further? That's a big question.
Right, and of course, Poland, right? I mean, I wanted to also bring in the Polish angle because Polish foreign minister said that, you know, even without the American support, that Ukraine should be able to continue on if the European Union is there for Ukraine. And do you agree with that statement, or would that simply not be enough?
Yes, I genuinely agree. I think that we have the major factor why Ukraine can continue this war, which is, first of all, Ukrainians' will. Ukrainians will resist Russia, and with enough European support, financial and military, Ukraine can continue to do that. Right,
so because today marks 3 years since the start of the war, let's take a look at some of the key events that took place over the last 3 years, if you can walk us through that.
Well, sorry, you asked me this question, right? Or it's
yeah.
Oh, well, the major events in the last 3 years, I think, is the fact that we have, since 2022, the major conflict, the major crisis in Europe. So this is the main event which unfolded a number of processes in the region, in Europe specifically, and in the Western-Russia relations. So that we definitely, since 2022, have more united, more geopolitical Europe, even if we can't say that Europe has gathered enough capacity and commitment still. So we're still in this process. We see Ukraine as a different country. We see the region in between Russia and Ukraine different. Europe offered membership perspective, started negotiation talks, accession talks with Ukraine and Moldova, and obviously we can talk about the arrival of Donald Trump. That we, since basically the last few months, we have a lot of uncertainty about where the future of the region, the future of transatlantic relationships, and the future of Ukraine and the whole region is going.
Right, Ryhor. So basically, we just had the federal election in Germany. So my question for you would be, who do you see as the leader in the EU in terms of support for Ukraine, right? Because some were saying, of course, that the EU is lacking the clear leadership. Some are saying that perhaps, you know, Poland could be at the lead. Others are saying that if Friedrich Merz becomes the chancellor, perhaps he could show more support for Ukraine, be more decisive than Scholz used to be. What is your take on that?
Well, we have to see. So far, I do think that we do have lack of leadership in Europe, and Macron's attempts to be a leader failed, Clearly, Angela Merkel was a leader of Europe before she departed, and since then we have a vacuum of leadership in the EU. Whether Merz can be that type of a person, we have to see. But obviously, if we will have a type of a Polish, German duumvirate, clear alliance, at least what to do vis-a-vis Europe, which can be more decisive and can be the locomotive of change in Europe and towards Ukraine, that would be great news for all of us.
Right. I mean, the situation is quite difficult. I mean, it is quite difficult to understand for some, right, with this shift in rhetoric by President Trump, and with the way that Volodymyr Zelensky is trying to respond. So, do you expect new or more concessions on the part of Ukraine in order to try and accommodate the US? Of course, we're talking about the rare earth minerals. There was, different attempts at trying to negotiate, and here I quote, tighter ties, right, with Ukraine, economic ties. Of course, it doesn't seem to be entirely Ukraine's will to do that. So, what shall we expect?
Well, two things. First of all, I think we do not need to pay much attention to the rhetoric of Trump and his associates. We've seen a lot of colorful statements, not only on Ukraine, but on Panama, on Greenland, Colombia, and we do see that nothing really happened. And in this regard, we do see statements which doesn't lead to basically much action yet. So we have to take it with a lot of caution and I would say not pay too much attention, don't be too paranoid or panic about that. When it comes to Ukraine, yes, we do see that Donald Trump's probably plan is to try to yield concessions from both sides, and from Ukraine he can easily do. He clearly has a lot of leverage over Ukraine, and Zelensky and Ukraine has no other options but to yield in the end of the day. So I do not see a reason why this plan will not be signed. I think for Ukraine this is unavoidable, and Ukraine will sign this deal, and it will try to basically placate the US where it can, but without jeopardizing its national interests, where it knows that it can't accept US terms such as Ukraine cannot accept holding elections.
Right, because this is against the martial law. However, I mean, President Zelensky mentioned this idea of perhaps if Ukraine is able to join NATO, then perhaps he could step down. I guess he's trying to negotiate whatever he can. So, what can Ukraine possibly get in return for signing the rare minerals deal?
Well, it's obviously the case where Ukraine cannot get NATO membership or security guarantees in return, but it can give Trump what he really wants, and then hope that actually that in conjunction together with Putin's total dismissal of any compromise with the US will lead eventually to the restoration of the Washington's full-fledged support to Ukraine. So this is what Ukraine can aim at and shall aim at. But obviously, it cannot be some type of a quid pro quo. So in this regard, Ukraine is not in a position to basically fully dismiss Trump's plans, because the consequences of that can be too painful.
Right, and I just sort of wanted to ask you this question. Do you think that there's some, sort of personal animosity between Donald Trump and Volodymyr Zelensky at the root of all of this? Because, the amount of negative descriptions, right, that Donald Trump hurled at Zelensky is quite, astonishing.
Yeah, you are right. It's quite astonishing. I would say it's one of the factors. I wouldn't say that this is the root cause. I think that clearly Zelensky and Trump relationship is very sour, and it obviously goes to to Trump's first term, Burisma, Hunter Biden, all this first impeachment of Trump. So there is a lot why Zelensky is actually disliked by Trump. But I think the driver of all this is still Trump's grand vision that he can make a quick deal with Putin, and that's why he pushes on Zelensky that hard. So this is the root cause, and that gives us hope, because when this fails, when Putin totally dismisses Trump's ideas, Trump will have to make a U-turn.
Right, and actually I wanted just to follow up on what you said, that Trump believes that he can make a deal with Putin and that Putin is trustworthy. We've heard George W. Bush some years ago say that he peered into Putin's soul, and it famously became this, he was mocked for that for years, right? So why is Trump making the same mistake of, saying that Putin is trustworthy, and, is history repeating itself?
Yes, you are exactly on point. It's not only about George W. Bush. We do see that each US president, Bush, Obama, obviously Trump during his first term, and also Biden, all of them tried to reach out to Moscow. All of them thought that their predecessor failed because they couldn't connect to Putin, they couldn't reason and talk to Putin, and they thought that they could reverse that. And I must say, Zelensky himself tried the same. He was saying Poroshenko failed, not Putin failed to make peace with Russia in 2019, and then he won. So we do see this kind of a continuity in the US administrations, that all of them thinking that we can make a deal with Putin, just need to meet and talk, be it in Geneva or Helsinki, and they all fail. So in this regard, Trump is repeating this mistake, which is obviously very costly for the US, for Europe, and obviously for Ukraine, but hopefully this mistake will be realized very soon.
Ryhor Nizhnikau, thank you so much for being with us this morning. Much appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you for watching World Talks. Please stay tuned for more.